Kia ora everyone, kia ora team. How are we doing today? Hopefully you're all doing okay. It's lovely to see you in this format for the first time in a couple of weeks. I hope you've had a nice break in the meantime. I can see that at least one of you has attempted the answer, which is fantastic, so well done, Fiona. Let's see if we can try and answer this in like a methodic and scientific way. If you want to, you're welcome to pause this and give it a little bit more of a think and then try and answer and see if you are correct. In the meantime, here's the answer. So we can see here that during the days of activity, I'll go over to here, we can see that during these days here, the kiwi was active for certain periods of the day. You can see this is very likely at night time. The kiwi is a nocturnal organism. As soon as we place the kiwi into constant darkness, though, at around this day here, we can see that the kiwi starts to spend its time slightly differently, and over time it drifts in, and I'll make sure I'm pointing in the right direction for you guys, this direction. What that tells us is that the day length for the kiwi, or the kiwi's internal clock, is ticking at slightly more than 24 hours. So each cycle is taking slightly longer than 24 hours, and as a result, that means that their free running period is more than 24 hours, and so we see that position shifting. I'm going to make sure I get it right in the camera. This way, it goes chukunk, 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 like that. If it was less than 24 hours, then as we added those together, we would get a shift. Instead of being in this direction as we go down, it's hard doing this when you're reversed in the camera, you would see it like this from that point of view. Hopefully that's clear to you. If you want, you can spend a little bit more time looking at this. But anyway, what are we doing today? Well, the first part of that is completely wrong, because that's what I copied in for the juniors. If I instead edit that slide to actually be what we're actually doing, it's the Phytochrome, make sure I spell it correctly, the Phytochrome System. Might be useful if I put system in there too. You can see how slow my computer is running, trying to get all of this stuff done. Hopefully it all works. All right. Yes, what we're going to be doing today is looking a little bit at the Phytochrome system. I'll just basically be going through the slides that Mrs. McNair has put up for you and trying to summarize those details as best I can. After that, we're going to be doing a bit of a quiz, a bit of a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire sort of game. So if you're up for that, stick around and we'll have a bit of fun doing that. If you've got any questions related to the content, you're welcome to ask them in the chat. I'll periodically flick back over to that and we can have a bit of a dialogue going. Yeah, so hopefully you guys all sort of understand that at this point. All right, let's move on. Okay, so first things first, one of the activities for you, I believe it was last week, was creating a diagram of the Phytochrome system. And so I went through and wrote some notes, just like a little bit of feedback to each of you. If you weren't able to get those completed for either of the last 2 weeks worth of work, you're welcome to do that in your own time and then to send me an email, let me know, and I'm happy to have a look at that if you would like me to. You don't have to, but it's important that you're, all up to speed with the content so far. So we can see we've got PR and PFR, we've got the inactive and the active form. In the presence of red light at 660 nanometers, we have a quick conversion of the inactive form to the active form from PR to PFR. In darkness, we have a slow reversion of that. What this means is that during the day, levels of PFR increase, and during the night, levels of PR decrease. These are the different forms of phytochrome. If we look at the difference between long and short day plants, Ms. McNair has included some supplementary diagrams for you to help you guys refresh your memory. You can see that depending on the length of day or depending on the shortness of the night, so if we, or the length of the night, depending on how we're looking at this, we're looking at day length. If we've got a longer day, we build up more PFR. And if we've got a longer night, we spend more time with a larger quantity of the inactive form. In summary, what this means for a long day plant, where flowering occurs as a result of having reached some length of day threshold, you see a large accumulation of PFR, and PFR is normally the molecule that is involved in promoting flowering. Short nights mean that you don't have enough time for PFR to decay to PR, and as a result, these PFR levels, when they are increased overall, when we have our long days, and as a result, flowering is promoted when we have a day-night cycle that looks like this, when we have a nice long day in the middle of our summers. We compare that to our short day plants, which only flower when the days are short enough. PFR, or high levels of it, inhibits flowering. So this active form inhibits. If we have too much of this, flowering cannot occur. Short days result in not too much PFR being accumulated, and long nights result in lots of time for PFR to decay to PR. That leads to lower PFR levels, and thus the inhibition is lifted as PFR falls below some critical level, and then we get flowering occurring. Hopefully that difference is starting to crystallize in your mind, because you'll need to really understand that concept before you go and write about it. Otherwise you'll get yourself all manners of twisted. I'll just check back to the chat while you have a little bit of a look at this, which is kind of a summary of that point. Okay, doesn't look like there's any questions so far, but please feel free to type them in, and I'll periodically be checking back at this as we're moving forward. So there's some details here about phytochrome itself and its two forms, about the way that they absorb light and the way that these conversions work. There's some more details in here about phloragen, which is the flowering hormone. It's really interesting, actually, like the whole science around this. I'm not an expert in this domain. My study was much more focused on the human body, but it's still fascinating to learn about. And I think particularly being a new teacher, this is an opportunity for me to learn alongside you about a lot of this kind of content. So I'm really excited as we're kind of going through this, because this is like new stuff that I get to learn. So I hope that you're feeling similarly excited about learning this. Sometimes the Phytochrome system can be the thing that kids find a little bit daunting about level 3 biology, as it's one of those opportunities to look at the nitty-gritty detail of a biochemical pathway. But if you're kind of looking at this, this is really how everything works within us and within the organisms around us. Really, it's all chemicals interacting in complex ways and proteins interacting in complex ways to generate our responses to the environment that surrounds us. So hopefully these points will help you to understand that content. There's some information here about the evidence for the presence of phloragen, or evidence for a hormone that triggers flowering. And one of the interesting things here is that if you graft a long day plant onto a short day plant, what you notice is that flowering occurs in that long day plant when even when the critical night length even when the critical day length for that long day plant hasn't been reached. That indicates that there is some other hormonal transfer, some other system that is communicating and is consistent for these different kinds of plants. That means that this plant is getting the signal that it is time to flower, and that signal is something that is not specifically tied to this upper section. It's something that's consistent throughout the plant. Looking over here, this long day plant, which would normally produce these beautiful pink flowers, doesn't flower during a shortened day, but this one, when it's grafted on to these short day plants, does flower. That's a really fascinating piece of evidence there. It's a really interesting science. There's another little diagram in here for you, and kind of a combination of different diagrams for you to have a little bit of a look at. This is kind of one half of it, and then we introduce you to the summary at the end. So you can see the sort of pathway like this. You have some PR, sunlight, or red light specifically, converts this quickly during the day. We get high levels of PFR. If we have a long enough day, we produce levels of phloragen, which when phloragen is activated leads to flowering. So PFR is the form of phytochrome that promotes flowering in these long day plants. If we instead compare that to short day plants, when PFR is converted to PR as a result of darkness, we slowly see more PR being built up, but as long but night needs to be sufficiently long enough to overcome the activation that PFR allows. As a result, eventually, when you have high enough levels of PR and low enough levels of PFR, we activate phloragen and we lead to flowering, depending on which type of plant we're looking at. If we're looking at short day plants, this is the system that it uses. These critical thresholds were developed as a result of really rigorous testing, and you can see this diagram here in this video hopefully provided an eloquent summary for you, so I'd encourage you to have a little bit of a look at that. You can draw the whole thing in one big diagram like this, and that kind of gives us an opportunity to think about how everything is working together in complex, depending on whether we're looking at a short day or a long day plant. Hopefully that's all clear to you so far. I know this is a bit of a tough one. If you've got any questions, please type them in the chat. Or alternatively, you're welcome to bring them to our meeting, our Google Meet, when we have that this week, and I can try and answer those questions then. If there's specific aspects that you're struggling with, maybe we can try that. One interesting thing is that the software that I'm using to live stream to you now, I figured out over the weekend how to get that to work for webcam. So theoretically, I should be able to do some of the same fancy stuff that I do here through our Google Meets if it's of value to us, including, you know, above and beyond just sharing like normal screen and stuff. So we can try and see if that works. All right, let's have a look. This next section is looking at the adaptive advantages. This is really the crux of the problem. Like, understanding the biochemical pathway, understanding the way that these things work together is of value, but it's really of no value if you don't get how it links to providing an adaptive advantage to the plant and allowing it to pass on its genes, or at least have a better opportunity to do so. That's the real nitty-gritty of level 3 bio, and it's about not just knowing the knowledge, but being able to apply it in this way, and then being able to apply it in unique contexts that really get you those higher grades. And I think you're all capable of those. So there's some examples in here about how phytochrome, or timing of flowering, allows a plant to have a selective advantage. And one good example here is that if you time sexual maturity, you time that flowering and that ability to be ready to be pollinated, with pollinators being active and present in greater numbers, then that increases your chances of cross-pollination. It increases your chances of reproducing asexually as opposed to sexually, so having a greater series of genetic variation, and possibly a number of other conditions depending on how you pollinate. If we're thinking about how different plants have different pollinators, it's really important that you're able to flower at the right time. And so if you can time that in a way that times up with your pollinators too, that might provide you a selective advantage over other plant species that are competing in your space, but also against other plants within your species that might want to outcompete to be present in the next generation. There's some other adaptive advantages that Ms. McNair has put in here, and that's about spending less energy and resources for the same amount of growth, or alternatively, spending the same amount and having more growth. There are a number of reasons why you wouldn't want to waste too much expenditure on flowering. One interesting thing is that as humans have started to selectively breed plants, we have a tendency to breed in certain traits that aren't necessarily advantageous for that plant in the wild. It's interesting to think about how humans are adapting those, what is quote unquote an adaptive advantage for a plant. Maybe an adaptive advantage for an orange tree a long time ago was producing fruit that were just nutritious enough to allow their seeds to survive and produce another orange tree, or just enticing enough to entice whatever organisms would eat them. Nowadays though, we will or a plant will be more likely to be successful and pass on its genes if it produces a lovely big piece of fruit that is easy to peel. And that's quite a different type of advantage. So something else for you guys to be thinking about there. There's some detail in here about how during very cold months, in particular when you have high levels of ground frost, you might have an advantage if you are able to drop your leaves, if you're one of a particular kind of plant, to reduce transpiration. That's that evaporation of water out of your leaves, because then you're retaining water, particularly if it's no longer accessible or as accessible as a result of the ground being frosted over. You could also have selective advantages about when you develop your protective mechanisms, which might be really costly to develop, but if you develop them at the right time, they're protect against snow. So you've got to weigh up those things in terms of adaptive advantage. The important thing to recognize is that it's not a thought process from the plants here. Sometimes when we use the terminology, we're framing it like the plant is trying to think of a strategy. It's random chance. It's the result of these random mutations, and as a result, sometimes these strategies work. But sometimes in terms of the way that we frame them to you, we will frame them in a more story-like way, as opposed to the truth, which is that it's random chance and genetics. Hopefully that's all making sense to you so far. There is a task there for you, and it's an exam-style question on photoperiod and the Phytochrome system and timing of flowering, and it involves the content that you used last week. You can copy over that content directly if you would like to, and use it to structure your answer. The idea is that that task from last week becomes the scaffold that you can then use to create a more detailed answer. So if you gave a really detailed answer last week, congratulations, you're ahead of the game when it comes to this week's work. There is also a model answer, and I've put this all on the next slide for you to have a little bit of a look at if you want to, around how to answer that question. And you're able to refer to that in the slides that Ms. McNair has made and in these slides that I'll upload for you, around making sure that you're producing an answer that's at standard. Notice that there's not a great deal of content there. To be able to get an excellence, you don't have to write pages and pages worth of work. It's about having a succinct and clear explanation of the question at hand, providing the marker with the clear understanding that you know what you're talking about. In particular, it's that last bit, talking about adaptive advantage, talking about the ways that this benefits the organism. Okay, there's also some extra details on extension here, so you're welcome to have a little bit of a look at this video from LearnCoach. LearnCoach, fantastic resource if you want to go and have a look at that. They do a really good job of summarizing everything into really clear and logical points. Great if you love videos and that kind of way of learning. I'd also encourage you, again, if you're looking for extension, to join our scholarship bio class. There's a lot of content on there that you might be interested in, and Ms. McNair and I will continue to add to that as we find awesome stuff that we think you guys would like. All right. Right now we're going to move on to doing a bit of a quiz. I'm just going to go over and check the chat, make sure there's no questions that came up as a result of that discussion. Hello, hello, hello. It's lovely to see you all. Okay, what we're going to do now is a bit of a quiz. Who wants to be a millionaire? When I did this with the juniors, it worked okay. The only thing that didn't work is that my little baby computer really struggles having a bunch of things open, including the soundboard that I'm going to use for this. So if I unexpectedly drop out in the middle of this, it's because my computer was just trying its best. But anyway, why don't we play the game? All right. First question. What is the name of a graph used to display the behavior of an organism during different light cycles? Is it A, a lithogram or a litogram? Is it B, a mammogram? Is it C, an actogram? Or D, an activitygram? Now you are welcome, as you're going through this now, to type in the answers in chat. You're welcome to have a piece of paper in front of you and write those answers down, or another notepad to write those answers down. If you're watching this in retrospect, you're welcome to pause at any stage and have a bit of a think. In fact, actually, that might be advantageous to you because you could use your 3 lifelines there. You could get a friend to cover up, who's already seen this, to cover up 2 of the options. Or you could call someone who you know is really knowledgeable, or you could check what the chat is saying as you're going through these questions as your example of asking the audience. You're welcome to do whatever system you want to use. But anyway, hopefully by now you've got yourself a final answer. And the correct answer is obviously an actogram. Hopefully we're all familiar with that terminology now. You've just earned yourself $1,000. Let's see if you can answer all 10 correctly and earn yourself the million. All right, question number 2. If an organism is circadian, its cycle of activity lasts A, about a day, B, about a week, C, about a year, D, around about. Remember, you can pause this at any time. Okay. Hopefully you've got yourself a final answer. Okay. And the correct answer is about a day. Yes, $2,500. Hopefully you're all feeling reasonably confident with that. This is just the beginning though. It starts to get a little bit harder from this point on. Okay. Question number 3. Which of the following is not an example of how photoperiodism benefits an organism? Content from today's lesson. Plants can maximize growth with minimal cost and energy. B, plants feel calm and relaxed during warm days. C, plants drop leaves to reduce transpiration during ground frosts. Or D, plants reach sexual maturity at the same time as pollinators. Give yourself a moment. This is a long-ish question that I had to make the font really small about in order to fit it all in here. Okay. Hopefully you've got yourself a final answer. Remember, this is for $5,000. If you get this wrong, you walk away with nothing, which is also true if you get it right, because this isn't really for money. But, you know, hopefully you all do well. Anyway, the correct answer was absolutely right. It was B, feel calm and relaxed during the warm days. Not quite the normal biological language we would use about this sort of stuff. If you've gotten that right, that's $5,000 in the bank for you, and we're ready to move on to question number 4. This is where it starts really ramping up. This is for $10,000. What is an accurate translation of the word Zeitgeber? Is it A, clock gainer? Is it B, watch giver? Is it C, sleep giver? Or is it D, time giver? Give yourself some time to answer. Hopefully you're feeling confident with this. Okay. You've got yourself your final answer? Okay. This is for $10,000. That's a lot of money. Did you pick A, B, C, or D? Well, the correct answer is absolutely right. It's time giver. Zeitgeber, time giver. One of the interesting things about the German language is the way that longer words are often, it's actually similar to North American, I've forgotten the name, but in the high-ish regions of North America, cultures will also conjoin words together, and you might have heard the expression that Inuits have 50 words for snow. In reality, that's as a result of the same effect of stringing words together. Zeit in German means time, and Geber means giver, or giver. Hopefully that's all clear. Not relevant to biology. What is relevant to biology is question number 5, which is worth $25,000. It's a lot of money. Chrysanthemums only flower if the critical dark period exceeds 14 hours. What kind of plant are they? A. Short day plants. B. Long day plants. C. Medium day plants. Or D. Tuesday plants. And you've got yourself your final answer? $25,000 is a lot of money. You could have walked away here with 10,000 fake dollars. But instead, you've got your answer. But is it the right one? Let's see. The correct answer was absolutely right. Short day plants. If the critical dark period exceeds 14 hours, then that means that the day is nice and short, and so these plants are able to flower. Okay, now we're up to question number 6. $50,000. Hooey. Hopefully you are feeling ready. Which of the following is the name for a directional response to a directional environmental stimulus? Is it A, a nastic response? Is it B, a tropism? Is it C, a nastism? Or D, a trostic response? The name for a directional response to a directional environmental stimulus. So hopefully you've got yourself your final answer. Are you feeling confident? You could still walk away with $25,000, but if you get this right, that's $50,000. That's quite a lot of money. Let's see if you got this right. Absolutely right, it's tropism. Nastic responses are non-directional, whereas tropic responses or tropisms are directional. Excellent work. $50,000 in the bag. But this next question is for $100,000. Let's show you the question. Which of the following is probably not a mechanism pigeons could use to navigate? A. Sun position. B. Earth's magnetic fields. C. Google Maps. Or D. Visual landmarks. This is indeed a very tricky one. Okay, hopefully you've got yourself a final answer for $100,000, which is a lot of money. The correct answer was there you go. Google Maps, not probably a mechanism pigeons could use. Maybe. Sun position, definitely. Earth's magnetic fields, definitely. Visual landmarks, definitely. All great examples of mechanisms that we've discussed in class that pigeons can use to navigate. All right. Now we're into our top 3. This is for $250,000. What reaction does red light, 660 nanometers, convert? Remember that PR is the inactive form and PFR is the active form. Does it convert PFR to PR slowly? Does it convert PFR to PR rapidly? Does it convert PR to PFR slowly? Or does it convert PR to PFR rapidly? You could walk away now with $100,000, but if you want to try this one, you're more than welcome to. You're welcome to use your lifelines, to phone a friend, check the audience, cover up 2 of the options that are probably wrong, or get a friend to do so. Okay, hopefully you've got yourself a final answer for $250,000, which is an awful lot of money. Quite a lot of money. And the correct answer is coming soon. Here it comes. Absolutely right. PR to PFR rapidly. Hopefully we're remembering that diagram, we're remembering our directions, and we're all feeling confident about it. Okay, if you got that one right, you're on $250,000. Very well done. This is where it gets really tricky though. The final 2 questions. Are you up for it? Hopefully you are. Let's give it a go. Question number 9. When is a crepuscular organism most active? Dusk and dawn? Is it B, night? Is it C, dawn only? Or D, Tuesdays? Hopefully you all remember discussing crepuscular organisms in class and how even I got a bit confused trying to put everything together. But hopefully that information has sat in your head and you're feeling reasonably confident with the final answer that you have picked. For $500,000. That is a lot of money, quite a bit of money. It's a lot of money. And as a result, we need to take our time with answering it because we need to build suspense. And the answer is I missed the button for correct answer. There we go. Dusk and dawn. Absolutely right. Crepuscular organisms are most active at dusk and at dawn. Hopefully we're familiar with that terminology. If you got that right, and you've gotten all the rest of them right so far, you're on $500,000 real money dollars. Congratulations. Do you want to go for the million? Well, let's at least see what the question is. When is a vespertine organism most active? A, at night. B, at dusk and dawn. C, at dusk. Or D, at dawn. This is a tricky one. Hopefully we're all remembering the diagram that we drew in class, different sections of the day, what our labels were for those different organisms. Hopefully you've got yourself a final answer. For 1 million real, completely real dollars. Thank you very much for playing all the way through this. I'm still stalling for time. Were you correct? Absolutely right. It's at dusk. Hopefully you've got that 100% right. And if you have, guess what? You have just become a real life for real millionaire, which is pretty awesome. So thank you very much for playing. We'll play the theme song. That is the wrong one. It's this one. And if you got all 10 of those right, congratulations. You should be feeling reasonably comfortable with the content so far. That was a pretty tricky one. All right, that about does it for us for today. Okay. That's us for today. The work is on Google Classroom for you to complete at your own pace. If you want to work through this quiz again at a later stage, you're more than welcome to do so. The video will be up for you guys to refer to for your revision. I'm happy to answer any questions if you've got them, but congratulations for at least participating, even if you only walked away with however much people walk away with in that game. After I played this with the juniors, I went and binge watched a bunch of episodes and actually found it really fun. Not enough biology questions, but that is okay. If you've got any more questions, I'll stick around and happy to answer them, but equally you're happy to bring them either in the comments or in our Google Meet, which we will have pretty soon actually. I'm just going to double check on my calendar, make sure I don't give you the wrong piece of information. Absolutely right. It is on Friday, period 4, so that's at 12:35 on Friday. I look forward to seeing you all there. Make sure you've completed the weekly reflection for this week, and have a lovely rest of your day. Don't work too hard, and I'll catch you all later.